Okay, so I've covered the 12-week bench press raw program by Gillingham, and now we're going to do his 16-week squat and deadlift program, which is a little bit more complicated than the bench program. Now, when I did this program, I actually programmed them all together. So I did the bench, the squat, and the deadlift all together as one. Now, I haven't included that link to that program on my website yet because I can't find it, but I will find it and I'll put it on my website and you can download it from my website. But we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to just talk about this program from the perspective if you're just doing this for the squat and the deadlift. So first thing you must do is put your projected maxes in here. Right, so you want to put them in pounds, whatever it is. Your squat max is with no gear and no belt, and your deadlift max will be with full gear. So with the squat max, you're going to do it with no belt on, no knee wraps, no elbow wraps, no wrist wraps. You probably want to wear some squat shoes maybe. I wore some squat shoes, but you probably do want to wear squat shoes, to be honest. You don't want to do it with flat foot. And then the deadlift, you put your gear on. So we're talking about this from raw lifting. So no bar straps. You want to just make sure that you've got your maybe your deadlift socks on or your deadlift shoes, and you put your lifting belt on. You got your chalk, and you go for it. So let's talk about the squat program first. The squat routine. So as you can see, it lasts for 16 weeks. 5 sets of 5. Now when you alternate between 5 sets of 5 and 8 sets of 2. You do 5 sets of 5 from week 1 to 3, 8 set 2, 5 sets of 5, 5 to 6, and then 8 set 2, week 7, 5 sets of 5, and you can see the pattern. You alternate between that until you reach week 15. Now week 15 is where you put on all your gear, your squat shoes, your wraps, your wraps, your knee wraps, your wrist wraps, your lifting belt, your squat shoes, and you chase these 3 heavy singles. So you would chase a new. What I did on this week is I actually felt like I could chase a new PR, so I hit a new PR on this week for these 3 heavy sets of 1 rep. And then week 16 is when you just deload. That's what I saw this week as. I saw it as a deload. It's 60%, 8 sets of 2 with no gear. So just make sure that you pay attention to this, because I actually, when I first did this, I didn't set my squat max without gear. I put all the gear on. I put the belt on, the knee wraps, the elbow wraps, and everything. Bit of a pain in the ass, because once I read it, I was like, shit, I burnt out trying to chase that max. So I just went with it anyway. So make sure you remember that. And remember with the deadlift, you wear all your gear. So you put your belt on and your knee wraps if you want them, your deadlift shoes, and that's that. So now you can see here when we actually don't wear the belt, we use no gear when we're doing the whole program, with exception to 1 week, which is week 15. Something to bear in mind as well. Make sure you don't forget that. You don't wear any gear at all. Now you start week 1 at 52.5%, and you work up to a maximum of 77.5% in week 13. And as you can see, the percentages alternate each week, so that's something to bear in mind as well. Make sure that you're ready. You have a training log. Another thing I made note of for this program: make sure that you have a training log with you and you make notes of each training session. So that's something that I forgot to do when I first ran this program, and the second time I did it, it really helped. So let's talk about the deadlift now. So that's that covered, sorted. Now, in regards to what you want to do for accessory exercises for the squat, my advice would maybe to incorporate some hip thrusters, to do some pause squats, some tempo squats, some Anderson squats, maybe some Bulgarian split squats, some lunges, but nothing that eats into your main training too much. Just variation exercises that maybe isolate specific weak muscle that you have in your legs, in your core. Alternatively, some variation lifts that work on your sticking points in your squat, for your squat. Now the deadlift routine, a little bit more complicated, I think personally, than the squat, because we're working from the rack, and we're also working just doing some 6 sets of 1 at sub-maximal weight. So let's firstly talk about how we do this. So when you do deadlift, he says assistance, I say accessory work. So when you have 2 exercises that he believes you should do. front squats and RDLs. Okay, the front squats are done before you do your deadlifting, and the RDLs are done afterwards. So each session you probably want to do your front squats first, 3 sets of 5, 4 sets of 5, and then you want to do your Romanian deadlifts afterwards. I actually replaced the RDLs with stiff leg deadlifts because that's my personal preference, and he recommends that you warm up with hang or power cleans. I don't agree with that at all, so I would probably just ignore that and just warm up as you would normally warm up for a deadlift. So that's my advice. So here you can see that we got rack 6, rack 7, rack 6, 5, 4, 7, 6, 5, 4. Now you can see that each rack position we do twice during this 16-week period. That's something to bear in mind before I talk about the next thing. So here he describes what he means by those rack pulls, where the rack should be set in regards to your knees, the bar's position to your knees. So for the rack 7 it's at the highest point. So this is just above your knee. Rack 6 is just below the knee. Rack 5 is 3 inches below the knee. Rack 4 is 5 inches below the knee. So you're kind of getting closer to more of a sort of a high block pull there. And that's how the rack position is set. Now what you do here is you work up to a single and record that max in your training log. Try to better PRs each time throughout the program. A good hint is to not go overboard in breaking your PRs. So what you need to do is set a PR for each rack position. So for example, let's say week 1, I've got the position in rack 7. Now when you do your rack pulls, you wear your gear, your lifting gear. When you're doing your 6 sets of 1 at sub-maximal weight, you don't wear any lifting gear. Have to mention that first. So you put your belt on, you get your chalk ready, and you go for a rack pull. Now, for example, if I rack pull here, week 1, in the rack 7 position, I would do, let's say, 400 pounds. And the next time I'd write that down right here. So I'd say what I warmed up to, my warm up routine. So let's just say 300. I'll say 350. I'm just doing this for simplicity's sake. Probably a bit more complicated than this. And then there we go. So that would be my training log for that day. I'll make note of how much rest I took between each one, where the positioning on the rack, the exact positioning, so I know when I next come back to do rack 7 again in week 9, where the rack needs to be set, what I did, and the PR that I hit that day. Now, my advice would be, if you're used to using the RPE scale, is to do it at an RP of about 9. So when he says don't go overboard here. That means don't try and absolutely smash this to an RP of 10 or just completely killing it, frying your central nervous system, hacking the bar up. That shouldn't be how it's done. It should be with maybe your top set, your heaviest PR of the day. It's probably an RP of 9, 9.5 maximum. So you got about 1 rep left, or that was probably just your absolute max. You didn't have to push it too much. I'd say an RP of 8.5 or 9. Because again, you don't want to fry your central nervous system and burn out that early on. So then now I know that 400 pounds at rack 7 was my PR for that session. So I know when I come back to that rack 7 position in week 9, I know that I'm going to try and beat that now. So let's say this time I did 410. So I know that I beat it. And that applies for each rack position. So let's say for this one I did 390 on week, let's move that up. Say in week 3, rack 6 position with my lifting gear on, I did 395, just say for example. Then I know next time that I come back to do rack position 6 in week 11, I know that I can beat that, and so forth. So when it says beat your PR, I must correct you because someone did this wrong who I recommended it to. It doesn't mean each time you hit the rack you want to beat that position, beat that PR. You want to set a new PR each time you come back to that specific rack position. So I'm not going to try and top my rack 7 position with the rack 6 position because it might be slightly less, because I'm now not working at such a high position. It's now going below the knee, so I've dropped from above the knee to below the knee. So chances are potentially it might be slightly less, and it's going to be harder than it was in that rack 7 position. So it means each time you come back to doing that rack position. So that's what that means in terms of the deadlift. Now the 6 sets of 1 is quite simple. You don't wear any lifting gear. You want these 6 sets of 1 to be explosive, quick, don't take long rests. Now here's what I did, and it worked well. It might not work well for everyone, is I actually incorporated bands and chains into this. So from week 2, when I started it, all the way up to week 6, I actually, for these 3 sessions, put some light bands on, resistance bands, or alternatively I put some sort of lightweight, medium weight chains on. And then when I got to 82.5, I didn't put any chains on or bands. I just did it 6 sets of 1 at 82.5, and then I did the same again from week 10 to week 14. I put some bands and chains on, and then week 16 I did with no bands and chains. That worked for me, and I didn't use my lifting belt, and I didn't use lifting straps or any sort of gear whatsoever, and that worked perfectly. So that's something that I could advise if you feel like you want to make this program a little bit more exciting, a little bit more engaging. However, that was not what was originally stated in the program. That's my recommendation. So take it or leave it. I hope you enjoy this program. Hope you have success with it. Stay strong, keep lifting, and as always, never give up. If you have any comments, comment below. If you like this video, please like it, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. So thanks for watching. Have a great day.